So we are here tonight because a federal election has been called for May the 3rd, and our duty and responsibility and privilege is we get to decide who represents us in Parliament. 2 of the 7 candidates are here with us. So Kim Travers, I'm just going to go down the list of candidates as listed on the ballot. Apparently the number 1 ticket holder is Kim Travers from the Labor Party. Paul Bachelor, our lead guitar player, so I've just heard. He's a rhythm guitar player from the Family First Australia Party. Glenn Ford from Trumpet of Patriots, not able to be here. Aaron Tyrrell from Pauline Hanson's One Nation, not able to be here. Sam Birrell, who's also a guitarist, so I've found out tonight, is from also part of the National Party of Australia, Victoria. And I think it's important to have that dash Victoria, isn't it? But we won't waste time on that. Jeff Davey from the Australian Citizens Party and Shelby Eade from the Australian Greens are the other candidates. If you'd like information on those who are not here, then I encourage you to do one of 2 things. I think we've got a list of some of the people up the back, but you can also go online and use your favourite search engine to find out some of their things. We're not going to make up any answers from any of those people. You'll have to go and work that out for yourselves. So the way tonight's going to work, I'm going to give these 2 gentlemen 2 minutes to tell you about themselves. No policies. 2 minutes just to tell you about themselves, so you've already heard they're guitarists. After that, they'll get 5 minutes to tell you about why you should vote for them, whatever reasons they might have. Then we're going to have some questions. We have some questions from a online group called Slido, or platform called Slido. Does anyone here accessed that? Some of you have, some of you haven't. Now, what I would like you to do, those of you who have phones that you think are really dumb because they annoy you and you get things wrong all the time, you can type into your search engine S for Sam, L for library, I for igloo, D for dog, O for octopus.com. And that will take you to Slido's website. Then there is a particular reference number to look at tonight's event. Now, those who are wanting to do this, have you all got that? Slido.com? Yep. S for Sam, L for library, I for igloo, D for dog, O for orange. I think it was octopus last time. .com. And then nearish the top of the screen, there's a largish box which asks you to put a reference number in there. And the reference number is 963 3097. 963 3097. And once you tell it to do that, through the magic of science, what will appear on your screen is the questions that people have put in for tonight. If you like some of those questions, you can press on something to say you like it, and that will put it up the screen so that it gets higher on my list to ask these gentlemen. If there's a question you would like asked, which is not on there, and you feel like you're good at typing, you can type it in there. But given the number of people we have here, we might yet also have a time for open questions as well. So for those who like technology, have you got the gist of what's happening with that?
Where did the questions come from?
People have made them up.
No. Local people? Or?
Some of them are local people. Some of them were from, there was a website that Carolyn had contact with that it was the group that put us onto Slido.
That was also shared on social media.
That's the important point, isn't it?
You can't say who's going to ask the question.
Yes. So we advertise locally for people to put their questions in, and so we trust that locals have done that. Now, and I note that while there's a large number of them, there's not many that have more than one tick on them, so I'm not going to go through them all. Okay, so we got that. Oh, by the way, you're going to hear some things you like tonight. You might vote for that person. You'll hear some things you don't like tonight. No need to argue. Just don't vote for them. You can still vote for them. But things you're working out what you like, what you don't like, and weighing out who you'll vote for. This is not a night to convince these two to change their minds. It's a night to get information out of them for finding out who you want to vote for. Any other questions about how we run, except that maybe tonight we're going to finish by 8:30? All right. In that case, I've tossed a coin and landed on the first person on the candidates list, Paul Bachelor. 2 minutes. Tell us all about yourself, whatever you want us to know. Oh, yeah, go for it.
Thank you very much. Good evening, folks. I have been down to Seymour many times, not generally for a long period of time, and we've done a lot of the rail trails out from here. Fantastic. I grew up in Melbourne. I trained as an electrical design power engineer. I worked in hydro stations and also did designs for Tullamarine Airport runways and control tower. Then, after some period of time, I got into the education area and taught in senior secondary schools, branching then on into TAFE and into corporate training. So we've travelled a fair bit around. I've been in over 20 different countries, seen 20 different cultures in so many different places. Barb and I live now just out west out of Echuca in a small irrigated property where we have raised 6 children and now we have 12 grandchildren. So we've seen a little bit. I'll just be aware that I'm not going into politics too much and talking about policy, so I've got to hedge around some of those things. We'll leave them a little bit later. But also we've been travelling, and some of our travelling overseas involved in volunteer programs overseas, and in all of that with raising our own grandchildren, we've just seen so many things in terms of young people and the way that families are not what they used to be. But in all of that, we've been involved in a number of volunteer work programs in a couple of different countries, and also not that long ago down in the area of Rochester, working down there for flood recovery for a rapid recovery organisation that was working down there. My wife Barbara has just finished, I was just sharing some folk down the back, 48 years as a nurse and midwife, and was honoured by a double-page spread in the Riverine Herald, which is the newspaper up in Echuca. And so we've been involved. We've helped set up 2 churches in the area up there, and one of those now has the largest op shop in northern Victoria in one of those churches, and it has huge impact, and a lot of their services are done online, so there's a lot of technical stuff involved. I have been somewhat retired, some say retired, but we're just chatting with Sam about working with, putting some bands together for one of the churches, had a motorcycle, these Northern Victorian Spider Riders.
I'll give you another 10 seconds.
Come through, and we've done a couple of programs for them, putting bands together with just older people like myself who've got musical experience and just wanting to put it together. So that's a little bit about me.
Fantastic. Some background around Paul. Sam, guitarist oh yes, give him a round of applause.
Well done, Paul.
So he's travelled from Echuca, a little bit closer. We kept to Shepparton. Sam, you've got a couple of minutes.
Thank you very much. Well, I was born in Shepparton and grew up on a property just between Murchison and Toolamba on the Goulburn River. I went to school in Toolamba and then in Shepparton, in both primary school and then a couple of years at the high school in Shepparton, and then I boarded at Assumption College in Kilmore, which was not in my electorate of Nicholls, but it is now, thanks to the AEC boundaries, is in the electorate of Nicholls. And after that, I did a few different jobs, not knowing exactly what I wanted to do with my life, but I did work on a farm in a place called Ardmona, just to the west of Shepparton, cattle, fruit and cropping. And I enjoyed that so much that I decided to go to university and study agricultural science, and I did that at the Dookie campus of Melbourne University, studied a degree in agricultural science, after which point I worked as an agronomist locally. My main area was helping with soil testing, leaf testing, fruit testing and pest identification of orchards. After doing that for about 7 or 8 years, I then joined a job with a global irrigation company, still based in Shepparton, but I was travelling all around the world helping set up irrigation, being the agricultural science advisor for big irrigation projects all over the place. That was very interesting. I'd always been involved in the Goulburn Valley community. After doing the agricultural science degree, I went back to university and did an MBA at La Trobe University, a lot of it based out of the Shepparton campus. Then in 2016, I became the CEO of the Committee for Greater Shepparton. Now, the Committee for Greater Shepparton is like a combination between a business chamber and a think tank, working with elected leaders of all different stripes to try and work out what we needed to do around the Greater Shepparton region, and to attract both government investment, government interest in our policy ideals, but also corporate investment into the region. And I did that for nearly 7 years, at which point I ran for pre-selection for the National Party before the 2022 election, and I was successful, and for the last 3 years I've been the member for Nicholls.
Fantastic. Right, so yes, so you've heard the alarm now which says time's up. And you've heard that I don't just cut you off exactly as soon as that happens. You get to finish your thought. All right. 5 minutes now. I might give you a 1 minute warning on this one, to tell us why we should vote for, or why you'd like us to vote for you in this coming election. And Paul, you might as well go first. Give the other bloke a bit of a rest.
Thank you. Look, there are only 2 of us here, and being a smaller group, I would say from the outset, we may seem a little bit strange, but I have great respect for Sam and considerable respect for what he stands for. However, there are some subtle differences and things that we think should have been done. It's one of those traps, of course, when you get involved with politics. There are always people coming along and saying the government's got to order, the government ought to do this or do that. So that people, instead of taking responsibility for themselves, for their family, for their community, they're looking to upload it and load it onto somebody else. Whereas those agencies are not always best fitted to fix those problems. There are other issues that can be fixed at a family level and at a local community level. However, there are some frameworks which we consider should be addressed, and if they're not addressed, in fact, if some of these were addressed some time ago, then Family First as a party simply wouldn't exist. Now, 3 of the major areas, we are supporting Bernie Finn. He's our lead Senate candidate. He was a member of the Liberal Party in the upper house in Victoria for 23 years. He was a member of the Liberal Party for 40 years. But they decided that he was surplus to requirements, especially when he voiced a difference of opinion on the matter of abortion. That was the main thing. Now, he's not the only one that's occurred to, but in his particular case, he put it aside and is going to get back into politics again on these issues. 3 primary ones that we are standing for and looking at, though we have a fairly comprehensive policy statement, which of course is available on the website, which everybody says. 3 of it, one of them is to lower power prices. That's my particular baby, having been a power design engineer. What we are doing at the moment is just, in my opinion, is just plain stupid. It is just crazy what we are doing for the power supply that we have, for the resources that we have, and what we are doing in this country. That's, instead of having plus $275 in your pocket, we're now minus $1,300 in our power, which is just really crazy. Number 2 is to stop gender ideology. I've just been speaking with a family who are involved in community here. He's just telling me about his children. His children came home, and the children decided, these are older children, walked out on a gender ideology meeting or discussion within the school classroom. When they did that, the parent was addressing the teachers and talked to the teachers, and of course was deemed as ignorant or arrogant for walking out on something. Now, amongst teaching and science teaching, I did teach some biology. As far as I know, that there are still only XX and XY chromosomes as far as human beings are concerned. But this ideology that comes in, it's destroying our young people. That's what Family First is taking up, is that we have got young people in this community who are so confused about which way, where they go. So what can they actually rely on? The very things and principles that families have stood on around the world for thousands of years suddenly are all in a flux. And so can young people trust those in authority over them? In many cases they can't. And so that's another area that Family First will fight to remove those things, Bernie Finn, if he gets into the Senate. And the other thing is to protect faith-based schools. I was the chairperson of a faith-based school, even though I taught for 14 years in state schools. We chose to send our children to a particular school, but it's a fight now to employ who you would like to employ, people who share your beliefs. Now, why should we have to do that? If we have, we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, why can't we include the values of the people who hold those things as being important? We think that's vital that we stand up for that, where the major parties at this point are not doing so.
Very good. He's got 30 seconds for next time, maybe. All right. Sam, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and I return the compliment. Thank you, Paul. I admire both Paul and all the other candidates who've stood for election. I know how confronting it is. This is the second time I've done it, and it is. You're putting yourself and your views before the people, and that's a confronting thing to do. So congratulations to everyone who's putting their hand up. I am of the community. I spoke to a media organisation today, and they sort of asked me, you know, why did you want to do it? What made you go into politics? And I wouldn't be interested in being the member for any other electorate. Okay, it was Nicholls or nothing for me, because I'm not the sort of person, I don't want to pursue a career in politics for the sake of it, to go to Melbourne and be a staffer in an office and then look around to see who's got a pre-selection coming up. I don't dismiss people who do that. Some very talented people in politics in the House of Representatives are there because they've done that, and that's fair enough. But for me, I'm a person of the Goulburn Valley, and I wanted to represent this community. I chose to do that via the National Party because I've had some admiration for the Labor Party over some years. I look back when I first got interested in politics, and the Hawke and Keating government did some very good things for Australia, as the Howard Costello governments did. And I even had hopes for the Rudd government, but that wasn't such a good government. And there's been challenges ever since, I think. But I do believe in political parties, and I do believe in parties of government. And I thought, if I'm going to change things for the better for my electorate and for my people and for Australia, then to be in a party of government is important. And for me, the coalition government is more aligned with the ideals that we share, I think, in the Goulburn Valley and Murray Valleys, and I include Seymour in the Goulburn Valley, obviously, because we're a very entrepreneurial people, and we're very, free enterprise and access to opportunity is very much an ethos of this region. And I think the coalition government is better for the regions when the National Party is in there fighting and driving for regional investment and for policy. So that's the reason that I ended up doing what I did. So I think that when you look at me, you can know that it's somebody who's not here to be a career politician, but is here to be somebody to represent the community for their career and this community. My passions obviously are regional communities, the arts, sport, agriculture, and all of those industries that sustain us. The reason that I want those industries to continue to sustain us is because I want young people coming through, seeing a path for themselves via education into these industries we've grown. Now, the industries we've grown in the Goulburn Valley, and where I come from is Shepparton, but obviously I represent a larger area than that now. But it has been around irrigated agriculture and food manufacturing. And that's seen such wealth be created. It's seen such opportunity from people who've come from all over the world to make something for themselves in this amazing part of the world. Now, what I really want to see happen is for young people to go through the schooling system, whether it be in Kilmore, Broadford, Seymour, Shepparton, up along the Murray, Chuka, Cobram, Yarrawonga, and see them for themselves an access to an education and then a career in one of our local industries, and all of the stuff that brings, which is, financial security, home ownership, being able to start your own family, travel. I want that for everyone. The way I think we do that is to make sure we focus on productivity of private enterprise, not to the detriment of the public service, but the public service has got to be there to support the development of competitive private enterprise using what we do so well. And what we do so well in the Goulburn Valley, a lot of it is food production and food manufacturing. A lot of it gets exported. I'm really keen to see that thrive. It's why I've been so passionate about irrigation water issues in the Parliament. I've also spoken about making sure we have business-friendly policies. And just as a final comment, I want the economy to thrive because I want the economy to be inclusive of everyone. Thank you.
All right, so we have 22 seconds left over for Sam. Competition here. All right, so you've heard their opening statements. I wonder what you're feeling about it. I wonder what you're thinking about it. I'm going to go onto my Slido and just see if there is any change to what I had earlier. Restarting. Oh, there's one more vote for the top number question. So I think I'll start with now just going through a couple of these questions to start us off with, and then my guess is that we'll get an opportunity for a couple from the floor as well. And obviously both of you get an opportunity to respond to these, and not expecting 10-minute answers, a minute or two answers to these would be fantastic if possible. So what will you do to ease the cost of living pressures on individuals and families, especially those most at risk? We'll keep going in the same order, hey?
Yeah, the same order around, okay. Yep. Family First are not travelling around with a barrel load of money. That's pretty obvious. We're not a major party. There's certainly areas that greatly impact families that we're very concerned about. One of those is the cost of living. In terms of young people, it is interesting. As I said, I worked in state schools. Most of that time was in state technical schools. There's only one technical school left in the state. I taught down in Cobden Technical School down Western District. Dispensing with those, we've got young people who then see no purpose, no ongoing approach to where are they going to be employed and involved. Whereas once upon a time, students in year 9, year 10 who we deemed at risk were not going to go on to university, they were already starting to train and work in trade areas. We have not followed that through. We've got a whole glut of young people that we have not really helped. We have not given them a sense of purpose, of meaning and truth. And therefore that creates a huge problem and a vacuum in terms of our industrial production, because wealth only comes from production. It doesn't come from handouts by using borrowed money. It doesn't work that way. It only comes by, has been talked about, is productivity, and having young people who have a sense of fulfillment in what they are doing and able to achieve something useful and purposeful, contributing to that productivity, in a particular area. And that's what we are missing. And then, of course, the price of power, which has just gone out of control because of the directions of the current administration, are escalating up. So we've got businesses that are closing down and disappearing. So what we have is gluts of young people in areas. There is no factories there to be running because the factories have had to go overseas because of the cost of their manufacturing processes. So we've shortchanged our young people in terms of not giving them an adequate education which suits them to be productive in an industry. So what are we doing? We're importing people with skills from overseas to bring them over to put them in houses that don't exist. Now, if that makes sense, then don't vote for us. Okay, that's all I'll say. Don't vote for us if all that makes sense. Family First goal is intention is to fight for those things, especially in the upper house.
Sam, the cost of living for individuals and families, especially those most at risk.
There's a few things that we're proposing to do for the cost of living. One of them's a cut in fuel excise. The main cause of the cost of living crisis is inflation staying for too high for too long. Now, the inflation rose sharply after the pandemic because, understandably, because of the shutdown of the economy, governments had to put money into the economy, and then I think Australia probably bounced back a bit quicker than the world probably bounced back a bit quicker than people realised. So that caused some inflationary shocks. The government of the day, and governments have done this in the past, need to respond to that, and they had one job, and that's to bring down inflation as quickly as possible, and that would have brought down interest rates. I think the Albanese government failed in their quest to do that. I don't think they brought it down quick enough because I think they were too focused on a lot of their pet projects that required a lot of throwing government money into the system. So that's what's caused, I think, the overall cost of living. So I think a more productive economy with lower government debt and less government spending will bring down the inflationary pressures. It's quite right to say that one of the key inflationary pressures is energy costs, and the current energy policies I don't think are serving us well, and I think they're leading us in a dangerous way towards higher energy prices for longer. So, you know, those are the main things that people talk about. Me, of course, with my passion being agriculture, I will say that food prices and grocery prices have risen significantly. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But one of the reasons is it's getting harder for primary producers to do what they do in Australia. Now, what they've done in Australia for many years is be very efficient at providing cheap, high-quality food for Australian people. You make it harder for someone to run those businesses, there's going to be less of them, and the price of food is going to go up.
Thank you. I wonder if I'm going to take a risk here. Does anyone want to ask a clarifying question from either of them about that question, around that particular issue?
That's me. It is you, David. It is me.
That's your timer.
Otherwise, feedback. So you both mentioned the cost of power/energy, and that would, I presume, include fuel, electricity, gas consumption in the home and businesses. And sure, if those prices have gone up, you say you want to bring them down so that it costs people less. That's the dollar cost to the individual and maybe the business. What about the externalised costs? And I heard both of you mention about inappropriate policies or directions. I assume, and I want to verify explicitly, you're talking about a push for renewables, and you would prefer to keep coal stations going, build more gas-fired stations, and particularly invest billions of dollars in nuclear power plants which will not materialise for likely 30 years. Please respond.
Before you answer that question, the second question here was all about climate change. That's effectively what you're asking about? No.
This is about energy, where it comes from, and it includes that. So there are costs
too clear about what he's asking?
Yep.
Go for it.
I'm just sorry that we don't have 2 hours to talk about it. Having worked for the State Electricity Commission, worked in hydro stations, it's interesting when we talk about and we get these figures that are coming out of the federal government saying, if you're going to go down the nuclear path, it's going to cost nearly $600 billion and it's going to take, we mentioned 30 years. I strongly contend those. The United Arab Republics has just put in 4 nuclear power stations. It didn't take them a fraction of that time, and they did each one of them for $8 billion. If, in fact, the number that the federal government is throwing out there about what it would cost, that's for 7, right, that the coalition are talking about. If, in fact, those 7 cost that, you work that on a pro rata basis that there are 430 nuclear power stations operating around the world and another 59 under construction. You put that together and it means that the total cost of all of those power stations, that's not counting the 200 the 200 ships with nuclear power around the world. If you put the cost of that, it meant that the world, 32 countries have spent $40 trillion on those power stations, which of course is baloney. It's just fabricated nonsense. Did you also realise that the Snowy Mountains hydro scheme took 25 years to complete? And nobody says that was a waste of time. The current program that is going on in the Snowy Mountains too has been operating for years. It still won't be finished for another 4 years. It was projected as costing $2 billion and now it's out to 12. So when we pander these numbers around, it's always a good idea to get onto Google and check the reality, the real facts of these things, because there is so much stuff that we are being given. In terms of bringing down our power, we are committed to contracts for the gas, much of our gas under 30-year contracts, as I understand, and you just can't renege on those. So to simply say we're going to pull back the gas and use more gas in Australia, that's fraught with international repercussions. Therefore, we've got to remove some of the constraints on the exploration of gas because we've got so much gas in this country, not using it is just asinine. The other thing, coal.
One last little point.
Can I get that other half a minute that I had?
That's what you're getting now.
So, just to add on to this, for every coal power station in Australia that we shut down, the Chinese are building 600. They've got 3,200 coal-fired power stations and they are currently building another 690. And we think that we're going to make a difference by stopping a little bit of ours. It's like blowing into the wind. But see, we're not told those because it's not politically conducive or happy for us to consider that way because we want to appease certain people in certain areas of certain seats, right. And it's just nonsense.
Numbers are nonsense.
I was also a mathematician for many years and I look at the numbers and they do not make a scrap of sense in our current direction. Yeah.
Sam?
Okay. We do find ourselves, somewhat between a rock and a hard place in that Australia's economy, Australia's energy, and therefore Australia's economy, particularly Victoria's, was built on coal-fired power in Gippsland, in the Latrobe Valley. And that's what's really set our manufacturing ability up. And all across the eastern seaboard, we've had cheap energy, which has basically made us it's one of the things that's contributed us to being a first world country and having such the lifestyle that we have. But we have to have an energy transition, and I do accept that. But how we do it is really important without shipping industry overseas. And if we do get this wrong, people's lifestyles will reduce, and Australia will become a poorer and less secure country. So I suppose I go back to first principles and think, what are the logical things we can do? The energy minister, who I listen to often in question time, is fond of saying that the wind and sun don't send a bill. I just think that's emblematic of the lack of nuance and the simplistic approach and the one line sort of slogan approach we have to policy, and he's not the only one who does it, and there are coalition people who've done this before too. It's so much more complicated to try and transition our economy and our energy to largely intermittent systems. And I think the one country that's tried this has been Germany, and their idea was to, and I have been to Germany to look at this, was to run on renewable energy furned by Russian gas. Now, obviously, the Russian gas thing didn't work out too well, but also the renewable energy hasn't delivered what they thought that it would, and now they're importing a lot of energy, either hydroelectricity from Norway or nuclear electricity from France. I think we can look at those economies and learn some lessons. I think we can look at the Canadian economy and learn some lessons. I'm not opposed to renewable energy. I think it's got its place. And its place, in my opinion, is not on productive farmland in Goulburn or Timmering or those other parts of the electorate that are worried about this. So I think, okay, well, if I'm a genuine person and genuinely wanting to see emissions reduced in a sustainable long-term way without what I would call some artificial timelines, what's the technology that we need to use? And I really do think nuclear technology is something, even if it does take quite a long time, I do think nuclear technology is something we need to embrace, along with a mix of other things and phase out generally of coal-fired power stations.
All right. So hopefully some of that answered your question, David. Hopefully. Yes, what, sorry?
I said I got what I asked for.
You got what you asked for. That's good. Correct. Correct. It helps you to decide where you're going to vote.
Just one sentence.
One
you know,
sentence?
Australia is the only one of the top 20 OECD countries that doesn't have nuclear. The only one.
So yes, for some they celebrate it, for some they don't. Okay, so the next question on here was going to be around climate, but I think we've actually done something about that. And in the interest of addressing another issue, and having heard someone ask a question earlier about did local people ask these questions, here's a question about local situation. How will you support industry in this area and increase employment opportunities in this area? Now, actually, I'm going to go to you first, Sam, because I think we need to give some thinking time this other way as well.
No, that's fair enough. That's a really good question. I mean, Seymour's got so much potential. It's a different place to the northern sort of Goulburn Valley and Murray Valleys. I see it as an amazing place because it's got a lot of hills and it's got a lot of beautiful area. It's got a river running through it. It's got much better access to Melbourne in terms of railway. In terms of train access to Spencer Street than anywhere else in the electorate, so it's got a lot going for it. It's got the spirit of the people. It's had some challenges over the years as well. I think there's opportunities, and sorry, I should say it's at the hub of major transport arterials. I'll say that. So the Hume Freeway, what will be the Inland Rail, and all sorts of roads up towards Shepparton and to Echuca and over to the west of the state. So I think it's got a great deal of potential. It's just finding the best way to harness that. Look, I've worked in the Seymour area with the people for 3 years, and I think it's a community that's developing ideas about what they want it to be. I've had people talk about wanting to see some gas out at sort of to the west of Seymour, over the other side of the Hume potentially, to see if there could be a potential for an industrial park. I think that's an idea worth exploring. I think that for a variety of reasons you could move a lot of industry here. So it's about, I suppose, working. I don't want to prescribe the answers. It's about working with the community to see what do we have, what are the natural advantages Seymour has, and I've illustrated some of them, and how can we best harness those. I'll just make one more comment that 10 years ago, a bit over 10 years, 12 years ago, Shepparton saw itself as, where are we going? We're declining in education, social cohesion, outcomes for our young people. Some of our industries are going well, but others are foundering. We really need to come together and try and see where we can take Shepparton, and that was how the Committee for Greater Shepparton was born. And I think there's opportunities to do that with other parts around the region, and I know there's a lot of great organisations, including yours here in Seymour. So it's about a community effort, but we're going to need some funding, and we're going to need a party in government that is committed to putting funding towards regional communities to help them thrive.
Fantastic because that's 2 minutes.
I must be used to this. There's a clock in the House of Representatives, and the Speaker cuts you off if you go over it, so...
The clock here is broken.
Yeah, I noticed that. Otherwise we're
It needs a rechargeable battery. All right. What was our question about?
opportunities.
Local area. Yep. Fantastic.
Yes, look, in terms of, this is a federal election, and yet all the layers of government that we had, in this I would again consider a lot of what Sam is saying is very wise in terms of looking to increase the educational opportunities and looking for increasing the production capabilities. And he just mentioned about Goulburn. I mean, we've got fertile areas around this area whereby we're coating them with, I know people talked about them as being useful to solve our climate problems, but when we talk about renewables, they're not really. They're temporary transients, because it takes actually, you can endure the life of a nuclear power station twice as long as you can these areas that we're in, solar sections that we're putting around here, which are dispersing plastics and are just in fact minimising the use of the land. There's one of those areas, in terms of local production, it's one of those areas where local governments, working with state governments and with federal government, working together to find and maximise all of those opportunities and expanding the areas of education, certainly for the young people, and then supporting those however way they can. And that is not always just by handing out money and hoping that it ends up in the right place.
All right. Thank you for that. Now, I have numerous different questions I could be asking as I'm swapping between to stop my alarm from going crazy at you. I'm just going to do one more question from our list here, which will leave time for at least a couple. I was just going to do one more and then throw to you. And I know that it'll be a question that some people in this room will want me to ask, or they'll want to ask anyway. And it's around, where is it there? Where is it? Protecting rights for religious freedom, expression, conscience, and parents' rights to raise their children according to their faith. How do you respond to that? Does that include no faith? Well, that's what they can interpret the question that way if they would like to, yes.
Thanks, Sam.
Everyone has a faith in something, whether it's in a God or not is another issue. But anyway, I think we'll just throw it, the question is around religious freedom. Religious freedom.
It's a very good question. One that Family First stands fundamentally on. Now, it is interesting. Every creed, including atheism, has one thing in common. But we don't see that necessarily coming out a lot of the time, because we want to be arguing about this or that. Now, why do parents not have the right to raise their children through the education area that they like? When we look at all of the values that there are, one thing that is common amongst all of them is morality. Now, even somebody who says, I think religion is wrong, is stealing from religion to make a value judgment about that. Where else does right or wrong come from? So, but every creed in the world has morality. Now, why do we compromise with so many of those areas which have been the underpinning of Western democracies for thousands of years? Why do people choose to come to Australia? Because we've got plenty of space. There are values on which this country was founded and the nation that we have. Dispensing with those and putting them aside as if they don't matter because we might want to choose to believe in something other else damages the very fabric that our young people have been looking to, depending on, and families been building on this country since it was founded. And long before that, the very core of family itself is based on those kind of values. And they didn't come out of the thin air. So we see as Family First, it's vitally important that whatever faith it is, as I said, I taught stuff in state schools, and some of that stuff was just absolute nonsense. Certain things that were supposed to have been scientific, they weren't scientific. They were a theory that was based by somebody. And if you've ever had anything to do with teaching science or so, you've watched it changing all the time. Science was the study of truth. Now we've moved it over to being whatever the consensus says that it is. That's not science, it's ideology.
Sam, religious freedom.
Well, our society's built on freedoms, individual freedoms, liberties, and that's a really good thing. The liberty, the freedom to practice a religion, the freedom not to practice a religion. Those things are really important to me. I don't really want to see the federal government get too much into that. What I would say is that there are limits on the expression of culture or religion, and those limits are about human rights, equality of gender, respect for people's individual freedoms. I suppose that there is a bit of a, I won't say a sticking point, but an interesting thing for us to consider is that if we admire and champion freedom in our communities and our society, do we give the freedom to people who don't agree with us to be able to send their children to schools where they're taught things that we don't necessarily agree with? Now, where we've got to draw the line is that the answer to that is yes, providing that those follow a certain framework of human rights and things that we hold dear, such as gender equality and equality under the law, protection of children, all of those sort of things. So, I'll give you an example. I spoke to a Christian. This will help you understand where I come from. I spoke to a Christian school in this region. The Christian school wants the right to be able to not hire people who are in homosexual relationships as teachers because that's against what they're teaching. Now, I said to them...
15 seconds.
Thank you. I disagree with you. I disagree with your perspective on that. I think that people who are in homosexual relationships can be wonderful teachers, and I think that they can be, and I don't agree with you. But do I think that you're right to do that because the parents, not a state school, the parents choose to send their children to the school of your faith? Yes, I do protect that. So it's a difficult one, and you have to find, each person will find where they are on that. But that's sort of where I come down on that. I don't agree with you, but I protect your right to be able to do it.
Okay. We need some questions from the floor. I've got a feeling there's someone over here who wants to ask a question. Is there others who want to have a question they would like to ask?
I'm happy to ask a question.
Yep, and I saw your hand as well, Liz.
You're first. Oh, okay. It relates to education. Sam, I did a little bit of homework before I came, and I noticed that you spoke against the free TAFE proposal. I think you were absent for the Better and Fairer Schools bill, so you didn't vote on that at all. And you also voted, I think, against the early childhood education and care. That's to give the 3-day guarantee for early childhood stuff. Could you explain why these elements of education in this area were not appropriate, particularly when we've just heard how important education is to both the social and the economic development of the place here?
Sure, and look, if I just ask for a little bit of time on this, because when people ask about my voting record, it's if I could just start by saying that every bill in Parliament has things that you like and things that you don't like, especially if you're in opposition, and you ask the government to split the bill, and they never do, and Coalition probably didn't either, and so it's sort of in an omnibus. So people will always find things in a piece of legislation that you voted against that sounds quite reasonable and say, why didn't you do that? And I'll explain my position on those issues. But I just for those, I've been in Parliament one term now. It's very difficult and complex to get your head around legislation. There are good things in it in a piece and bad things in a piece, and sometimes you will wear the bad things because the good things are so good, and other times you'll have to die in a ditch on the bad things because they are so against what you think is the right way to go. And as far as not voting on a bill, I'm not sure about that. I will say that there are times when, if the coalition and Labor agree on a certain course of action or an amendment that a crossbencher has put up, we might not all go and vote against that if they've only got about 5 votes. It's a technicality. I'm happy to talk to you about it. On those specifically, I'll start with free TAFE. I got a Churchill Fellowship to study education, and I went to Germany and Finland particularly to look at education. And the way that those countries were moving students from schools into what they call tech schools and apprenticeships, and then into industry. Their tech schools are far in advance of ours in terms of quality. So I argue for better TAFE, not free TAFE. And I don't necessarily think that just by making something free, and when we say free, somebody always pays, but by making it free, necessarily we're going to get better outcomes for our industries. And I've talked to a lot of our businesses with that. You offer something for free, kids do it because there's no real, in some cases, not every kid, but kids might do it because there's no real, you don't have to pay for it. And if you do it for 6 months and it's not your thing, you can drop out of it. I would prefer to see some sort of a fee help arrangement with TAFE, and also it wasn't means tested, so anyone could do free TAFE. Some sort of fee help operation where there is an investment on a loan basis, a cheap loan basis, and that we invest some of that money not into free TAFE but into making much better TAFE. Now, there was a couple of the early childhood thing. So the early childhood thing, there's not enough childcare places, and Seymour particularly is a bit of a childcare desert. And I've spoken to people here who've said, one woman in particular I had a great conversation with, and it was a family, and she said, I want to go back to work in the hospital. The hospital wants me to go back to work in the hospital, but I can't find a childcare place. What the 3-day childcare guarantee did was guarantee it for everyone by removing the activities test, so you didn't have to be in work or study. And we had a fundamental disagreement with that. If we're not going to make it universal in terms of everyone can get a childcare place, we wanted to prioritise people who were using childcare to go into the workforce. So that's why I voted against that, even though there were elements in that bill that I thought perhaps would have been good. And sometimes that's where you get caught, when you're voting for or against something in Parliament.
All right, now I know Liz had a question.
Thank you, Michael. I really don't know where to start. I have so many questions after listening to you two gentlemen. Do you want to record me? Don't sit on my phone. I might just start with a really simple one. Sam, why are you opposed to farmers selling their own water back to the government?
Because when farmers do that, that water goes out of production. So the government takes it away from what we call a consumptive pool. So there's a certain amount of water, and farmers trade water between themselves. So some of them, there are water brokers who own water. There are large companies that own water that don't have any farms, and some people disagree with that. And there are farmers that own water. I have nothing against farmers trading water between themselves, because then the water continues to get used to grow crops, and those crops get harvested and manufactured, and that employs people. When the government buys it, they take it out of production because they put it in an environmental water holding, and there's just less in the consumptive pool. Now, when there's less in that consumptive pool, and we get a period of dry weather where Eildon might be a bit lower or Hume might be a bit lower, and people's irrigation entitlements will be reduced, and farmers go into the market to buy temporary water, and they find that there's not enough there, or there's not as much there as there used to be, the prices go sky high. And I fear that will threaten agricultural businesses in Northern Victoria. So water trade, I agree with water trade, but water trade to keep water productive and not take it out of the consumptive pool. And I'd argue over 2,000 gigalitres has already been taken out of the consumptive pool for environmental purposes. And one of the local environmental users of environmental water, the Catchment Management Authority, the Goulburn Catchment Management Authority, they believe that the government has more water than could possibly use for environmental purposes. So
right.
I'm opposed to more being bought back.
I'm going to give Paul an opportunity to say what he might say in Parliament if there was an issue around.
I would take the same view and oppose it for the very simple reason. As a small property irrigator, Dr. Jennifer Maharesi has done an enormous amount of research on this water processes. It's fascinating that we call it environmental flows. If we were serious, we would remove the barrages down at Goulburn, which prevent the natural flow of the seawater in and out. Now, they want the water down, so we've got Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria farmers being, I would even put as both, bribed into selling their water. And we're watching so many properties around Balmain area especially. The family farms are just dying because of lack of water, or it was more economical for them to sell it off. But in actual fact, this water that's being so-called environmental flows, it's not really helping the Red River, the Red Gums, because they don't need water all the time. The water that gets down there, so we're depriving water usage, Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria, to feed one industry down in South Australia,
So it
called
sounds like
environmental.
both of you would vote very similarly on.
Yes,
on that,
for very
that
good
issue.
reasons. Environmental flows, what environment are we protecting? If we were serious, as I said, we would remove the barrages down at the other end to allow it to continue as it was naturally for a long, long time before we started to fiddle with it. Because it's evaporating, the evaporation rate is increasing. Therefore, because of the evaporation and the greater salinity, they want more water to come down to solve a problem that they created but was created there by putting these barrages in. Let's get
right.
back. If we're serious, let's take that out and then talk about environmental flows.
One more.
Sorry?
Where preferences are going.
To the National Party and then to One Nation. Hence, we do agree on many things.
Yep. Right, so we're
Yeah.
getting to very last statements, basically.
Yeah,
We're about to wrap up. 8:30 has arrived.
A lot of people get asked a lot of questions about preferences. All it is, I'd say, get asked that question about where are your preferences going, where are you sending your preferences. Just the reality is, none of us send our preferences anywhere. We just have a how to vote card. We ask people to put one on us. You have to number every box. So we do a suggestion to give me the best chance of winning. It's not who I think's the best person or the best party. It just gives me the best chance of winning because I think that's the best thing for the electorate. Everyone is free to walk in and number the boxes any way they want.
I agree. Sorry?
Thank you for being honest on that.
Oh, okay. We try
All
to
right,
be.
and I'm going
most
to
of the
stay
time.
almost honest to the 8:30. If you've got more questions you would like to ask, I'm sure you gentlemen might have a cuppa before you head back home. So I'm going to say thank you for coming and being willing to air your thoughts as to why you have run for election. I trust it has been helpful for those who've turned up to hear something from these two candidates. And if you want to hear more from others, you'll need to look them up. So thank you one and all for coming. I'm going to be really take a real big, anyway, do you want to say one minute wrap up from each of you? 1 minute.
I'll go first. I do love the democratic process. Some of you are going to disagree with me and I'll disagree with you. We're all a community. I love the way that we can air these discussions in Australia. When you ask these questions, I do listen to you, and it helps me formulate my own position on things. So I do thank you for being part of it. Two things I just want to say. Firstly, you go and hand out how to vote. You go to any one of the early voting centres or on the day, and you'll see Family First, the Greens, Labor, us, some other people, all volunteers with different coloured T-shirts on, just being incredibly friendly, enjoying each other's company, and participating in the democratic process. We need to protect that, and candidates need to be civil to each other, and it doesn't happen in every electorate. I think in the country we can do it really well. And second thing, I'm going to be voting on polling day in the primary school that I went to, and they'll have a photo of me and everything. It's just I love you talk to grade 6 kids and just say, this is a country where you can do anything you want. And then the final thing is then you'll walk out of the polling booth on polling day and you'll see someone who's recently arrived from the Middle East or somewhere where they don't have our democratic traditions, who's gained their citizenship, and they'll be taking a photograph of themselves voting. Isn't that fantastic?
It is, and it's wonderful how politicians, like mathematicians, make two things into three.
Well, yes, my wife has been looking after things up in Echuca, and many of the people who are on what we would regard as an opposing view are people that we worked with and have still great friendships with. It's interesting, Sam mentioned before, we spent some of the afternoon together out, and there was a young lady there who fundamentally the principles of her party I would strongly disagree with. But we had a wonderful chat and a wonderful relationship. That is the process of the democratic process in Australia, that you can come. Nobody here that I know or aware of has got a gun. We can come here by free will, and we can share and talk about things, some of which we may considerably disagree with. But we respectfully disagree with each other. And that's the nature of this country, that we want to hold those values and that morality that we have in this country as a fundamental basis.
So thank you again, gentlemen, for coming and allowing Seymour to hear your ideas and why we should vote for you, according to you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for turning up as well.